There's been a lot of talk about raids, balance, and the current state of raid in 2025, so I wanted to weigh in my opinion on it. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the feedback the devs gave the content creators. I've watched several of the videos that those guys have had. I've watched some of their feedback on things that we would like, and I've got some comments and some thoughts on some of it, so I thought I'd weigh in a little bit. I really do appreciate you guys. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you like stuff like this, if you like me talking about this sort of stuff, and let me know down below what you think about, some of the things I'm going to throw out here, or maybe if you've got some of your own ideas. Again, I love listening to some of them. I've certainly picked up a few ideas from you guys in the comments. You guys are absolutely amazing, so let me dive into a few of the things I kind of want to address. Now, one of the things I want to address, and unfortunately since I've completed all my daily quests, they don't show up for this, is we've talked about silver being a problem. And a lot of people have focused on gear removal being the big problem with silver. And while I agree I'm not a huge fan of gear removal, and honestly I'm not a huge fan of the way that they have chosen to fix it with these 1 hour, free gear removals, it feels like a very limited way to put a small dent in it. And since you now have attached it to a resource, I think you're going to find that you get less engagement with it than if you simply just let it happen. That said, one of the problems that we have with the silver economy is that some of these daily quests here that we have give you, 100 or 200 account XP, which for those of you who are not level 100 actually can do a little bit of something. But for the most part, after level 60, all this does is give you a free energy refill and some free gems, and that's it. And there's really no difference between a level 77 account and a level 100 account, other than you've slowly but surely taking off additional rewards from getting to level 77 to level 100. So that already is not a particularly exciting thing. But on top of that, you're getting somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 silver, which means that every single one of these quests does not give you enough silver to remove a 4-star item from a champion. And that is actually where the big problem occurs. The amount of silver that you can get from farming gear, from doing quests, from getting rewards is minuscule. We're talking about, if we go into the Fire Knight tournament here, this is 100,000 silver that's right behind me here. Why isn't that 1 million? Why isn't this 2.5 million? Why this is only 250,000? That is the equivalent of selling 7 or 8 items, or the ability to remove 2 6-star pieces and 1 5-star piece from somebody. That's not that exciting, and that is really part of the problem with silver. If they were to up the daily request rewards for silver, the daily requests would suddenly feel like they're more meaningful, more interesting to do, and you wouldn't mind having to pay to remove gear quite as much if you could earn some of that silver back. If the ability to do your daily quests meant that you could re-gear 1 champion per day of daily doing your quests, and by re-gear I mean get enough silver to actually remove all their gear and put new gear on, there would be a lot less complaining about this. The total amount of silver you're earning from your daily quests, including the advanced quest, is less than 500,000 silver, and that's pathetic. One of the other things that has certainly not only contributed to the silver problem, but has contributed to the gear problem and certainly made it harder to advance your account, is the fact that Plarium continues to rely on 5-star gear in places that really shouldn't have 5-star gear. If Gold 5 is supposed to be the pivotal end-all be-all of gear, why can I get 5-star rare gear from this chest? 5-star rare gear is not relevant on my account that is 180 days old, let alone my 4-year-old account. Yes, maybe a 5-star legendary piece could be possibly relevant, but a 6-star gear, even a 6-star rare piece, could maybe be actually relevant, because the difference between a 5-star and a 6-star piece is so great and so grandiose. I understand you don't necessarily want to give out shards like candy, and don't want to give out books like candy. I can disagree with you on some of those, but I at least understand some of the design development for that. But some of these chests that you only get once a day, or maybe, for example, in Cursed City. Why on Cursed City Hard, if I could beat Amius on this account, which I can't, but why for accounts that can beat Amius am I getting 5-star gear on Amius Hard, who is supposed to be one of the hardest bosses in the game? Normal? Sure. I get the fact that maybe I'm earning 5-star gear on normal. The chance for 6-star, that's fine. But why on the hardest levels of things are we still earning 5-star gear? That means you're getting less silver for selling it. And since, of course, you're probably selling it because for late game accounts, a lot of 5-star gear is not particularly useful. But it also makes building, gathering some of this gear that is so hard to gather that much more difficult. And it doesn't make it engaging. It makes it frustrating, because what happens is the people that get lucky with this stuff are the haves, and the people that don't get lucky with this are the have-nots. And what also happens is the people that do spend money to have more bites at this apple can afford to get okay occasional 5 stars, whereas the free-to-play players, if they don't get lucky, they can simply continue to not have particularly good gear. It just doesn't make sense. Plarium has now shown us that they can make a triple raid for Super Raid in Faction Wars. Faction Wars Hard, you can actually hit a button and use all of your keys on Faction Wars Hard. Why can't I do that on Faction Wars Normal? Why can't I do that on Doom Tower? You want me to beat the floor 20 of this Magma Dragon? Fine. Let me load up all of my keys at once and run the battle and be done with it the one time. Save me the extra 15, 20, 30 minutes of running battle after battle after battle. I get 15 keys of these silver keys a day, and if it takes me 2 minutes per key, you're talking about 16 to 20 minutes of time simply farming something that I'm probably just walked away from the computer, so I'm not actually spending time paying attention. Why not let me run all the keys at once, that I only have to sit through the one run and be done with it? Iron Twins is another interesting example. I have actually heard a content creator that I respect talk about how they don't like to run Iron Twins because it feels like a waste of time. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, but if you're going to make me sit through 6 keys because I can't use super raids on Iron Twins, which already feels kind of silly in the first place, why are you also forcing me to spend energy on something you also have key limited? It doesn't make any sense. This is the only content in the game. In fact, this is the only content in the game that has all kinds of weirdness about it. It is keyed, but it also requires energy. It is the only content in the game that requires energy that does not give you silver and experience. You do not earn experience for running Iron Twins. Really weird. It's the only dungeon that does that. Why? It really does make no sense to be limited in that way. You want to make it a keyed only dungeon? I mean, fine. It fits in the dungeons. It makes sense to have this in the dungeon, but why not just remove the energy requirements? Because it doesn't take that much energy, but because it costs energy in addition to these keys, you get a lot of people that don't want to run this. Let them use the keys. Let them at least do a super raid where, you can run 2 keys at once, save players a little bit more time, and give them the energy to do something that is more interesting than watching Iron Twins. That said, I really hope that you're doing Iron Twins, because Iron Twins is the best way to get all the materials to get souls, and you should be doing Iron Twins, and if you can afford to do the gems for it, you should probably be running it twice when it's void, at least if you're farming at least stage 12, if not stage 15. Now, one of the things that's come up recently is they've added these new quests where it is either a random win 3 live arena battles or win 5 battles in either Sand Devil or Shogun, or win 6 battles against the Iron Twins. And I'm not a huge fan of any of those. And the reason I'm not a big fan of any of those is some of those are just very disruptive. The other thing is the other 2 keys that are in there are run a Hydra key and run a Chimera key. Raid, you've got these weekly quests here for a reason. Why not have a weekly quest that is run a Hydra or Chimera key? Make it a weekly quest, put some interesting reward on there. If you want to make one for Hydra and one for Chimera, that's fine. I do understand that because the weekly quest is a 5-day week, you would have weird problems of them resetting at a time and not be able to run another key. Occasionally happens, so I can kind of guess why maybe you wouldn't want to have that there. But if you have it one or the other should always be open to run in any 5-day period. And it basically means that there is a one time during the week when you are probably required to run those, and every once in a while it may come across at an inconvenient time preventing you from completing the weekly quest. But if you miss the weekly quest for one day, it simply delays your ability to get this ancient shard by a day. It doesn't put off your monthly quest still, so you can still do the monthly quests, and it gives you something more interesting to run. Or maybe in the monthly quests, put a run 3 Hydra keys and run 3 Chimera keys, or run 2 Chimera keys. So yes, you can technically do that monthly quest in a week, but you can do a lot of these monthly quests in a week. Add a few more of the monthly quests, make them not the advanced quests, so that I don't have to worry about if I just, pull up to raid for a day, maybe I'm on vacation and I just want to do a few of these things and get my dailies done. Oh crap, I have to run a Hydra key. Well, at least with Hydra, there's now auto battles, but if you can't run auto battles, or for some reason you don't have a team that works well on auto, you're kind of screwed if you can't do that quest. And resetting it might force you to do live arena or do, one of these things where you're spending another 120 energy just to be able to finish the quest, possibly running a dungeon you don't want to do. Raid, you can do better with these quests. Now, one of the things I did complain about is I complained about these quests from the perspective of my free-to-play. Looking to start a brand new account in 2025 with Raid, use my link down below, set up a new account with a brand new email, and you can start off with Elenarl, a wonderful legendary that can do all kinds of fun stuff for you. And at level 15, you'll also get a Tagore, a wonderful support reviver who has been a big carry for me on my accounts. You also use the code Demon Slayer to get Tholen as well, and to get Lemonisi at the moment because Lemonisi is currently the free login champion. Start yourself off with 3 great legendaries and a wonderful epic, and enjoy starting a brand new raid journey in 2025. My free-to-play, level 77, struggles with stage 15 or higher on Sand Devil and struggles with it on Phantom Shogun. So as a result, I almost can't do those quests. Well, that's a problem, and that's very unfortunate. Now, I understand that very early on, there's situations where you have an advanced quest that might get locked out because, for example, you can't do a Faction Wars boss very early on. That one is frustrating, but to be fair, that one is not coming up anywhere as often. I think they've actually made an effort to get rid of that one to some extent. There's no longer the use a rare in Faction Wars. That seems to have disappeared entirely with hard Faction Wars. Definitely appreciate that one going away. And there are definitely some that are going to be difficult for some players on occasion, but I think having one on a daily level for an account that is maybe not in a situation where they can hit stage 15 is not a good idea. Now, if you're already a level 100 account and you can't hit stage 15, well, maybe you've just been playing a while and not focused, that's fine. That's unfortunate. But honestly, I don't think it's a quest that should be in the game. I think it's something that they should honestly rethink and figure out ways to deal with it. One of the things I am going to give them, it's a positive option for that, is instead of just making these 10 advanced quests and you have to complete all of them to get the extra reward here, maybe make 12 of these things. So you want to keep that use a chimera in there occasionally? Well, that's fine. Keep it in there as one of 12 or 14. So if I choose to skip it, the only thing I really lose out on is I don't get this legendary book quite as fast. In fact, that's one of the things that I think would be very helpful for a lot of players. If you put 12 quests in there, you only need to complete 10 of them to get this extra advanced quest. In fact, what you'd probably have to do is you'd probably have to do 13. This would be quest number 13, and you'd have to do any other 10 daily quests. And then if a Hydra key comes up and I don't want to run a Hydra key, well, okay, so I don't get that particular reward, but at least I can still get my full refresh of energy. And the worst thing that happens is I'm just 1 pip less towards getting this legendary book. And adding a few extra pips towards this legendary book means people get a few legendary books just a little bit faster. And we're talking a total of 2 per day if I went to 13, because technically there's actually 11 of them, because this is complete all advanced quests is 10 of them, and then that's the 11th quest, and that counts as one of these things as well. So you're currently doing 11. If you were to do 13, yeah, so you're going to speed this up by 3 days, 4 days. That's fine. That actually helps people get these just a little bit faster. It actually helps solve one of the big problems that the game has, which is access to books for champions that you want to build. Now, one of the other ones I want to talk about is there have been complaints about people with shards and the chances of getting champions. And this is one of the places where I actually don't think that necessarily Raid has misstepped too horribly. Where perhaps they may have misstepped a little bit is maybe it's just a little too hard to get these shards. So maybe making the shards slightly more available might improve the situation for most people just a little bit. But here's the thing that makes Raid different than a lot of the other gacha games out there, and has generally allowed it to stay at the top of the game for quite a while, is that there is such a big variety of champions that everybody's experience in this game is different because everybody has a different set of champions. While some of them are commonly threaded based off the fact that there have been fusions, and these fusions can definitely guide an account, but, not everybody is going to have exactly the same champion. Now, I have Fabian on my free-to-play, I have Tholen, I have done a lot of these fusions, I've got Ishiyama, so from that perspective, some of my legendaries look similar to other accounts that have started around near me, or maybe are just a little bit older. But at the same time, I don't have a Thor, because I certainly started much later than Thor existed, for example, and I don't have a Newt, I don't have some of those champions. And meanwhile, I happen to have a Morgane because I pulled a Morgane. Morgane's been very helpful for this account. That's been interesting. The ability to have a different and wide variety of champions and to have the challenge of tackling some of this content with those specific champions is part of what makes the game fun. The desire to constantly get more stuff, that carrot that gets dangled over there, does make the game fun. The fact that some of these things feel rare makes the game fun. And it's one of these things where people think that, oh, I would like to get all these legendaries and be able to run all these legendaries. Having played a game where I got almost every single legendary within the first month, I didn't find the game particularly enjoyable, partially because a lot of the game access was gated behind gear, but on top of that, because the game having so few champions was so focused on specific champions for specific roles, and they didn't have a large variety of those champions, where literally until I got Champion X, I couldn't do Content Y, and it didn't make for a fun experience. The raid experience, yeah, it sucks when you get a champion that is a duplicate when you don't have champions that you want. It sucks if you get a champion that is not as good as another champion. But there are very few champions that are so straight up trash that they are unusable, at least in the legendary category. There are a few that are just very difficult to use, or there's a few of them that are very niche for very specific circumstances. But for the most part, there's a lot of champions that are kind of useful in situations. Gerda, for example. Gerda was a login champion. Obviously, I don't have her on this account because you get her about a year into playing the game. The problem that most people had with her is a year into playing the game, her kit wasn't worth investing in for a lot of players. Although with hard faction wars, some people have actually found that, that combined with Vizug, combined with Stock the Broken, she's actually got some usability with those teams. So, Gerda's actually seen a little bit of a comeback. She was not a terrible champion. She was just not a good champion for the time you got her. But at the same time, sometimes that frustration can also make the wins where you pull your Marichkas, for example, your Georgids, or your Sulfurions, your Void Legendaries can be so amazing. And that I guess is kind of where having Void Legendaries that are better in general would be helpful. And that's where balance comes in. And this is probably going to be my final point here. One of the things that I actually got from Papa Drock broke this down a little bit, and I actually was very appreciative of him specifically calling that out. One of the things that the raid developers appear to be is they appear to be afraid to make changes because they are afraid of the shockwaves that those changes may cause. And it's not that they don't necessarily understand things. It is because they think they understand where things are currently, and they are afraid of what that change may do to the game. Now, this is part of why they have avoided making a lot of nerfs. This is why it took forever to get Trunda to be nerfed to some extent. This is why it took them a while to deal with some of the Hydra stuff. And unfortunately, what has happened is because it's taken them so long to do some of these things, they don't feel very reactionary. They feel very just kind of slow. And it would be nice to get more champion rebalances sooner. There are plenty of Void Legendaries that not a lot of people have, but the people that do have them wish they were better. There are a lot of regular Legendaries that a lot more people have that people wish they were better. There are probably a few Legendaries that are just a little bit overtuned or overpowered, and it would be nice if they would be willing and able to address a couple of them on occasion, because for the people that don't have them, it hurts. And worse yet, for the balance in live arena, it becomes very difficult to maintain that balance and manage that balance when you need a very specific champion to be able to succeed in live arena. And if you don't happen to be the person that picks them first, well, then you're kind of screwed, because not only do they have a champion that you can't answer, but you can't pick that champion to kind of help yourself as well, even if the other person might be able to answer that champion. So balance is one of the things that I think Raid could do a better job with, and I think they need to speed up how often they are doing these balance changes. They've been doing 2 legendary champions a month, or 2 champions champions, I should say. They've actually been doing some mythicals as well. They really do need to be addressing more than that. And honestly, if they were to up it to 4, well, 4 isn't great either, but 4 would be better than the 2 they're doing right now. And they have enough champions that need a rebalance that it would be nice for them to have to do those 4. But there are so many champions where sometimes it's just a matter of dropping one cooldown off on this or increasing the length of something on this. For example, I just want to bring up one here because I was watching a video by YST on Nari the Lucky, who's a champion I kind of like, but I understand why he's not super popular. And one of the problems that he has is he's got a single turn provoke on a 4-turn cooldown with counterattack. Now, not horrible, but the 4-turn cooldown is just not great given the way his kit works, and it means that if you're going to use him as a provoker, he's not a very reliable provoker because effectively for 2 to 3 turns, you don't have that provoke up. So there's 2 ways they could easily address this. One of which is just to drop this to a 3-turn cooldown. Then he has, this is a 3-turn cooldown, this is a 3-turn cooldown. It fixes his rotation and everything's fine. But the other option would be to make this a 2-turn provoke, which would make him more unique, would make this something where you have it 2 turns up and 2 turns down. But because you have a 2-turn lasting provoke, it means he could then get around to doing this. And then, of course, he's got the counterattacking where he's constantly stripping people. Well, that gives the rest of your team time to take control of a fight, for example, if you're on wave content. Or, in the case of Hydra, it means that he's fast enough, he can get around back to this skill before the Hydra head that needs to be provoked has gotten through both turns of that provoke. Sometimes a creative solution would be great, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be something that is just in the box of creating some of these cooldowns. But some of these champions, that's all they need. Just 1 turn of cooldown here or there, or 1 extra turn duration on one of their abilities, or some ability that allows them to take an extra turn. Or in some cases, maybe they just need a little bit of a multiplier boost. Not every champion needs a huge rework and a huge buff, but there's plenty of champions that could use a little bit of tweaking here and a little bit of tweaking there. And as much as buffing old champions means that the new champions aren't necessarily quite as relevant because they're not replacing old champions that are not as good, getting those old champions to be viable is a great way to extend the length of the game, because as players are complaining about the ability to get these champions, they want these champions to be good. And if I can be excited about a Nari the Lucky when I pull him, that would be amazing on, my free-to-play account, for example. So being able to be excited about a new legendary, even if they're not the meta one, as long as they are good, and it's not that hard to make more of these champions good, I think people will be a little less upset for getting some of these champions that are not the meta champions. So there we are. That is my take on some of the developer feedback that we've gotten. I certainly appreciate some of the quality of life improvements they have done. I certainly look forward to them doing more with things like the background battles. There's certainly things I would love with that as well. But those are some of the key things that I think would superly help the game. And to be fair, I think that some of the engagement in the game, I don't think that the Plarium really quite understands what that engagement is. I have a PC where I can leave RAID running constantly, so I often have RAID running in the background doing something either with auto battles or with RSL helper running stuff in the background, and I have it up. It doesn't mean I'm actively playing the game 24/7. I'm often not at my computer, not doing things with it. And that doesn't mean that the game isn't good. That doesn't mean that I'm less engaged with the game. The more you can enable people to not have to sit at RAID 24/7, and the more you can enable people to enjoy the time that they do spend sitting in front of RAID, the better the game will be for everyone long term. And that's really kind of what I want to get to. I love RAID. I am enjoying it. I am having fun playing Raid Shadow Legends. It's not just me yelling something in the intro. I like the game a lot. And that is why I care enough to make videos like this, where we're calling out Plarium to tell them these are the type of things that you need to fix about your game. So again, let me know what you think about some of this stuff in the comments. Let me know if you've got some other tips, whatever else. I do appreciate hearing some of this stuff. And again, I don't want to kind of milk all this content constantly, but it seems like it's something that people are talking about again because of the discussion with the developers. So I wanted to get my feedback out there because I think I at least have some rational points to make. So hey, I appreciate you guys. You guys are absolutely amazing. And again, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. You guys are absolutely amazing as a content community. I really do appreciate all the love, all the support. So you guys have a wonderful day. And until the next video, I am Bront.